Hi, fans of high quality entertainment. I am excited and thrilled and honored to be interviewing the one and only, what's his name here? Michael Noland from The Bottom Line. How are you doing?
Yeah. Hey, I'm doing great. Right, I had to read it myself.
Yeah.
So that's who I am.
Yeah. So thank you very much for coming.
And, no, thank you, Larry. I appreciate it. You know what? We've never had a chance to talk. We talked a few seconds before you did your intro.
Yeah.
But I did want to let you know I've been a fan of yours for years, years before I ever thought of doing a YouTube channel.
And when you saw me, you were thinking, if he can do it, I can do it.
Actually, you know what? I really love your humor. Yeah, that's what really gets me into it.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're also seriously connected to your thoughts and everything on music, rock music, generally speaking, you know, the classic rock era, I think we both kind of share that love.
Yeah.
And I would follow you and another guy named TJR. I don't know if you're aware of him.
Yeah.
And you know, he's much more eloquent than me.
Yeah.
You know, he's very, you know, he's very calm. His demeanor is very thoughtful, and my demeanor is probably anything but that.
Yeah.
You know, I wreck the English language in my videos often.
Oh, so do I. Yeah.
And you know, I when I say I write a video, by that I mean I do my research, obviously, but it's all in bullet points, or actually I'm not even smart enough to do that. I go number one, and I'll type in something, you know, that I want to make sure I've double checked, but most of my videos are all based on my memory, what I've experienced. It's just my view of what I feel is important in rock and roll. And you know what? That whole channel actually started off as it was a tech channel.
I saw that. I was going back, and your very first video was about, it was like a YouTube studio tour, right?
Right, right. And in that tour, you realize how small all of this is. I have an 80 square foot studio space available for my videos. I run my entire channel on an iPad, and I shoot my videos on an iPhone. That's about how high tech I am. Now, the studio, I am upgrading finally. We're going to get a computer in here and actually do it the right way. I'm going to switch to Final Cut Pro. I've always edited my videos on what is it, LumaFusion, because knowing one day I wanted to go to Final Cut Pro, which is one of the premium editing apps out there. And I've always tried to give the channel at least a kind of glossy look to it, but it's all done very low tech, very low tech. And it's, you know, a lot of my videos are just the seat of my pants kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think the first video where you kind of changed the format was doing the review of the Beatles Get Back.
Exactly.
And then you get a lot of views then, and you were thinking, oh, okay.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting, Larry. That video was the game changer. I didn't know it at the time. I think I started this channel. Well, I think I joined October 7th, but my first video was out October 28th. So I consider that the day I started. And come November, I had, of course, seen Get Back. I was really excited to see that, because you're talking to a guy at 15 years old. I went to go see Let It Be in the theater.
I remember. I did that
3 times a day,
it was
every day. Though. Yeah, it was. But, you know, I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
You know, I was just heavily getting into their lore and what was going on. I knew that of course, we had heard that the Beatles had broken up, and by the time that hit the theaters, that was part of the story and everything. But I lived in the theater while that movie was going. Same thing, I could say the same thing about Pink Floyd. I think they called it Pink Floyd Live. Now it's known Live at Vesuvius. Is that it? It's a DVD that's out, and it's them in an old Roman amphitheater.
Yeah.
And interspersed with cuts of them actually in Abbey Road working on Dark Side of the Moon. So, these are the kinds of things I grew up with. This is how this and buying Rolling Dumb magazine. And,
I used to buy it 2 years ago.
Oh, did you pour, this is a question for you. Did you pour over the John Lennon interview almost like biblical scripture?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I did, and I took it so seriously.
And I also took all of the reviews to heart, right? So with certain albums, they would say they sucked. It's like, okay, they suck. And
like Ram,
later you realize, oh, they didn't suck.
Yeah, like Ram. Ram by Paul McCartney. First of all, in my opinion, Ram is his best album.
I agree.
Bar none.
Yep.
And at the time, the guy who was going to write that up for Rolling Stone interview, he gave it a favorable review.
Yep.
And Jan, Wiener Boy, put the squelch on that because Jan Winter was buddies with John Lennon. But now when I was reading that Rolling Stone interview for the first time, that was the complete story as I knew it. And as the years unfolded, and I found out that there are people in rock and roll who are part of an almost elite system that make all of the freaking decisions. And Jan Winter's one of those people, in my humble opinion. Now, he may be the nicest guy once you get to know him. I don't know. But alls I know is his sticky little fingers have been in, especially in an East Coast kind of power grab later. His leanings was West Coast, but think about who his best friends are. Yeah. Think about who he hangs out with. Bono, who he calls B. Can you believe that? Me and B.
Maybe someday I can call you M.
My wife does that occasionally, and I know I'm in trouble. Because it's usually M, I, C. It's her way of counting to 10. But
even with that, it's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right? With these certain bands that the Guess Who, Steppenwolf, Grand Funk, still not in it. Three Dog Night, the biggest bands from the early 70s, right?
Right. And it's, the thing is, it's interesting. I haven't talked too much about this. I think I brought this up in one of my videos, but don't you almost get that McCartney is almost playing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame these days? I mean, he's playing nicey nice. And if there is I know in my heart of hearts, McCartney can't stand the man. He can't. He can't. There's way too much damage that man did to McCartney. Not only he cost that man money. Ram should have been a #1 to the bullet album, and only to figure out, that album and the McCartney album, by the way, around the early 90s is when I remember it kind of starting to turn around for these albums, as far as some audio files we're giving them a listen to, especially Ram. And that it was right around that time that the McCartney album was starting to be known as the first lo-fi album. And with a lot of the alternative acts in the 90s doing their version of lo-fi, all of a sudden he was in the charm for the first time in decades. And but him inducting so-and-so, showing up for this, playing nicey nice. I'm hoping. Anyway, I'm hoping what he's going to get out of it is a third nomination, which he more than deserves for his work with Wings.
Absolutely.
Because
they were a band.
Right, and they were a separate entity from
Yeah.
what we see him doing as a solo artist. Denny Lane. A lot of people don't know this. He wrote the most of the lyrics and most of the melody to Mull of Kintyre.
Yeah.
McCartney later bought him out, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that whole "long have I traveled," that's all Denny Lane, baby.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, the Mull of Kintyre refrain, Mull of Kin, that's McCartney,
Yeah.
right? And that's McCartney at his best is when he finds a really great writer and he can put that McCartney charm and spin on a song because as wonderful as that verse is by Lane, it's the refrain that we keep hearing. Now,
Yeah.
it wasn't a big hit here in the Americas.
It was here in
Certainly
Canada.
not in the United States.
Yeah, I know.
As a matter of fact, I think it was a B-side. And
Wow.
it drove me insane because, you know, anything came out, McCartney, I had it. I got my greedy little hands on it.
Yeah.
And, and all of a sudden, it just, we didn't get that version. And it was huge in England. For years, it was the number one single, outselling the Beatles, outselling Wings, everything, that had come before. So, but I think they deserve it. I really do.
Yeah. Even like Red Rose Speedway is another album. It's not his best album, but back in the day, because of Rolling Stone and these other magazines, it's like, oh, it's bad. So I never even properly ever listened to it until the archive collection came out. I bought the double CD, and it's like, oh my God, this is actually great. And I ended up buying the box set.
Yeah.
So it's for all those years, listening to lyrics.
Well, back in the day, I loved the second Wings, the first album came out. I bought it hook, line, and sinker, but I was a Beatles fan. I was a Beatles fan, and I was also, a McCartney fan. And so I thought they were all great albums when they came out. And then, of course, as the years unfolded, a couple of the albums, you have to choose which are the weakest of them all and all of that. And Red Rose Speedway is one of those albums that to me is like 2/3 great. And what the hell was he thinking about Loop the Indian and that little suite in there? Because it messes
myself.
Okay. Now, and see, a lot of McCartney fans do love that. And they, just like they like a lot of his doodlings on McCartney too. And those doodlings, by the way, were always in the Beatles recordings.
Yeah.
He used a term back in the day. I haven't heard him say this or use this term in recent interviews, but he used to say back in the 70s and 80s, I love topping and tailing an album. Topping and tailing. And he was talking specifically in the interview that I'm thinking of right now about Tug of War. And if you've ever listened to that, one of his very best albums, by the way, lots of topping and tailing, a lot of, what is that one line? Dun, 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 dun. It's just a little snippet in between. And he would do that. He really kind of polished that whole approach with side 2 of Abbey Road. But even before Abbey Road, there was a lot of little topping and tailing. And that's what he brings into a writership. I think that's what Lennon needed. Lennon would later go, well, he was messing up my songs, and boy, I really hate the recording of this one and that one. Yeah. But really?
I've always felt that John Lennon was jealous of Paul, like more than, I'm sure Paul was maybe a little jealous of John too for lyrics or whatever. But I think John was jealous because it was so easy for Paul to do a melody or write a medley, I mean.
Well, John would be the first one to tell you, I'm just a jealous guy.
Yeah.
And you know what? Jealousy was part of this is why I love John Lennon.
Yeah.
John Lennon could be wrong in the moment and not give a damn. John Lennon, this is how I'm feeling in the moment. This is how I do. John Lennon got his feelings hurt. Isn't that wonderful? You never quite know with Paul. Yeah. Paul's always the chipper, and he's wink. He's got a wink. I've recognized in interviews. And when that wink goes, it says Miles, because all of a sudden interviewers shut down, change direction, and whatever. He can do it in a wink. John Lennon wasn't that. His heart was right here, man,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the time, and he was a genius.
Mhm.
And McCartney had a jealousy that he dealt with, especially right after John died.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you could hear it in interviews. He'd go,
I was doing the
good Lord.
experimental music, like
Right. Yeah. He had to bring that out.
loops and
The books.
everything. Yeah.
Right. But he would even say things like, what? You know, George was just sitting around holding a plectrum.
Yeah.
He really, because they really did kind of make Lennon a saint, and that's understandable under the conditions of how he died, what was going around that, and everything. And on top of that, he was every bit Paul McCartney's equal in every sense of the word, right? Yep. And so, yes. And when McCartney finally passes off this mortal coil, a similar thing will happen with him, I'm sure. But living, still quite young Beatles had to deal with that problem, that all of a sudden it was like John Lennon's best stuff. Matter of fact, I even read an article where they tried to explain how the very best stuff on Sgt. Pepper's was actually John Lennon's stuff. And the first thing I felt was like, well, almost what stuff? I mean, he's got like, what, 4 songs? He's got a couple on the first side, couple on the second side. Yeah. And of course, Strawberry Fields got waylaid. That should have been on there. But then again, Penny Lane would have been on there if that had been on there. Yeah. That's a McCartney album for the most part. And John Lennon's stuff in there, without it, it would never have been the classic album it was. Yeah. Lennon's stuff is so important. It adds a dimension. And then my favorite cut on the album is not by either one of them. It's George Harrison, Within You, Without You. Yeah. I can put that on to this day and meditate. And it is so true. Every word about it and everything. A young man still in his relatively early 20s, and such wisdom from a song, and it just broke up the album beautifully. Yeah. And just when you thought you were getting too serious, Paul comes in, Chipper Dipper Dale, you know.
Yeah.
But no, this whole kind of thing about who was better, Paul, John, Paul. Well, I'm a Lennon fan, I'm a McCartney fan. Listen, while those two men were still alive, because you can only compare them while they were still cohabitating the earth, they were equals in every freaking sense of the word, yet as different as two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
You know?
So I have your list of your 13 favorite bands. Number 1 is the Beatles. I guess that's why we were talking about them. So, well, before I get into that, what is your first memory of music?
My first memory of music is me singing everywhere you go in my dad's band. He was a country and western singer-songwriter, had a small radio show in Vallejo that was doing real well. That's back when the Fleet was still in, and country. Yeah. Nobody was, there was a couple of rock and roll records. You had, Bill Haley, you had Elvis doing, but country basically still ruled the roost. Yeah. And he would always have me get up and sing this song with his band. I was like, I don't know, 2.5, 3, 4 years old, very, very young and very precocious. And I would always get up there. So I was raised in a musical family. My dad, like I said, singer-songwriter. My mom met my dad because he needed a female singer. And she auditioned. And that's how they met. And about a year later, I was around. So my mom was got a spot on the Ted Mack Amateur Hour. Yep. Daddy wasn't a good boy. So that went by the wayside because no, he was the main star.
Yeah.
And but I grew up watching. He played with Buck Owens and his band on the Blackjack Wayne show out of
Wow.
KTVU, Oakland, California, and I was allowed to stay up and watch that. Uh, Both of my parents were friends with Eddie Arnold. Eddie Arnold wanted to buy a couple of songs from my father. My father said, "No, I'm going to record them myself."
Wow.
Big fish, small pond.
Yeah. Yeah.
He should have sold those songs.
Yeah.
And so that's my background. Now, personally, music coming into me, I just handled this in one of my videos, is I first remember hearing Ring of Fire
Yep.
by Johnny Cash and several songs and my favorite at the time, the Everly Brothers.
Mhm.
When I heard Wake Up Little Susie, I mean, I was all, really? It, but won't the parents know they ran out of gas? I mean, I took that like it was a movie, honestly.
Yeah.
But I was just a small tyke. Yeah. Same thing happened when I first heard Eleanor Rigby. A few years later, I was a little older. I
Yeah.
cried when I heard that song. It was such a sad, sad song. These songs, Larry, these songs, where has all the songwriting gone?
Yeah.
Long time passing, man.
Yeah.
Long time passing, it seems like sometimes.
Yeah. So can you tell the viewers that aren't familiar with your channel just about your channel?
Yeah. Basically, I cover rock and roll. People have given me criticism saying, because I do criticize the critics. And so they have said, well, you criticizing the critics, you're being critical. You're a critic yourself. Who the hell are you to say what's on your mind? And I always reply this way: I'm not a critic. Critics are paid. They take on assignments. Let's say a critic for an album release, and they're going to cover this album. And they do their research. They may have never heard the band, or if they have, they've never really listened to them.
Yeah.
They sit down, they do a one-time listen, and they take a look at who's paying the bottom line for this article when it comes out and it gets released. And all the uppy-ups up there are all happy with that article before you, the reader, ever hear it. My whole response to that is, look, I'm just Michael Nolan. I'm a musician, okay? I have been in more bands than you can count in several different incarnations of my life, taking up to 10 years off at a time away from music due to some very personal issues. And I am a singer-songwriter, a musician, and I'm also a father, and I'm a husband, and I'm an uncle raising two 16-year-old boys at my age. Why I oughta, why?
Yeah.
No. So when people, occasionally I'll get somebody on the channel going, oh, look, there's Grandpa yelling from the porch again. And all I can say is, dude, I'm still doing stuff that people in their 40s are fed up doing.
Yeah.
So I stay current. I've always been kind of current. I talk exactly now like I did when I was 20.
Yeah.
Only less embarrassing, if you can even imagine that. But it's just me, Michael.
Yeah.
I happen to be a musician, but I'm also more than anything, Larry, I'm like you. I'm a music fan.
Yeah.
I love classic rock. I love all kinds of music, but that's my preferred. That's my lane. That's the one that I want to bowl in, right? And it's what I know most about. It's how I was trained as a musician in rock and roll. Get up there, minor pentatonic scales. Okay, here we go. Here's your E chord. Hey, you know what? If you can learn to do the E chord with your other three fingers and put a bar across it, you'll look cooler and you'll know more chords.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned it the hard way, and I paid hard-earned from a poor family cash on every single album. I'm a bit of a one-trick pony. I'm not, I don't know everything about prog. I don't know everything about metal. But what I do know is what came out of those genres that were extra special. I just covered AC/DC,
Yep.
all right, and Back in Black, and what an impossible album that was for them. Do you know that band was ready to break up, but Bon Scott's family said, no, no, don't do that. Bon wouldn't want that. They were ready to give it away, and not do anything with it. And it was
just imagine the pressure that Brian was under, right?
Yeah.
For those.
Yeah. And you know what? I didn't cover in that. I did a lot of research, and sometimes some of it just slips to the editing floor, right? But one of the things that I noticed with that album was that Bon Scott, I did put a tag in to kind of explain that in the video, perhaps even wrote some of the lyrics on that album. But the reason, and when you look at the little Wikipedia page there, the parts that you can trust, you find out that there's times when the band said, no, he may have played on a couple of tracks, and other times when the band said, no, he wrote some stuff.
Yeah.
But the article went on, the reason why that was not happening, or why they were kind of playing, fast and loose with that information, was they were scared to death. Their fans were so loyal. They were scared to death that the fans would see it as them trying to take advantage of Bon Scott's death, right, and thereby, kind of make money off of his passing. Yeah. So that, when I read that about a band, or an artist, isn't that wonderful? These people actually have a soul, because so many of them don't these days, Larry.
Yeah.
So many of them. I mean, I saw a pretty soulless show at the Super Bowl. I don't know what you saw, but what I saw was
I didn't even see it.
It was yeah. To use the word sad.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite cover it.
Yeah.
The worst lip syncing, and whatever happened to artists losing their careers when they were caught lip syncing. And yet now it's even on my channel, there's plenty of people. And by the way, that's another thing, since we were talking about my channel. My channel is me giving my opinion, but the real action happens in the comments. I always give a question to the tribe, and whether I do or not, they give their opinions. Yeah. And a lot of them disagree with me. Yeah. They think there is no problem with lip syncing. I find that, I find lip syncing, and to call that live, I don't like backing tracks. Unless, for example, we're talking about Back in Black. If the band showed up and we heard a church bell, show up.
They're not going to bring a huge bell.
They're not going to bring a real church bell. Everybody in the audience knows that's a recording. Yeah. I think that's fine. There's use for backing tracks live. I'm not saying there isn't. But when a band shows up, what was the name of that band? It's in my video. But a band showed up and their laptops didn't show up. Yeah. So they had to cancel their show, because they're only 1/4 or 1/5 or 1/10 of what you're listening to, because it's all on their laptop and they're playing to a click track. And, even people who have said that it's wrong have been caught doing it. Motley Cruella de la Ville, get caught right and left. And since when is that banned? In this time of political correctness, how in this time period, in our, not even in the United States, but in the Western civilization, how is that band even allowed to perform? I mean, some of the stuff, Tommy Lee especially, and I'm not even beginning to talk about Vince can't sing, Tommy can't drum. I'm just talking about the antics that band gets away with. It's insulting to me. Okay. And it would have been, I would have kind of goofawed, teetered that off if I was still 16. These guys are in their 60s now. Tommy Lee just turned 60, didn't he? Yeah. So, I mean, where's the excuse?
Too, right? Like they're basically for one big album, right? and
Yeah.
all these years later, or maybe 2 albums. And they're
Right.
still Sweet Child O' Mine. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I know you're
Yeah.
a big fan of Axl.
Not at all. But for those of you who have not been to my channel, no, he's the one guy that his voice bothers me.
Yeah.
But it's not just because I don't like him or anything like that. I can specifically state why I don't care for his voice, because first of all, he's got a great range. He's known for that range, all the way up to soprano, from low baritone, not bad. But it's like he's got a wah-wah pedal on his voice all throughout the song, and he can't, and his ability to change the tonal implications, the frequencies in his voice are like the old electronics that we used to use to record guitars, only there's no control on his voice. And so I hear all the time.
Yeah.
And shame on that band for absolutely ruining Live and Let Die.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
so who would you consider for rock some of the best singers, like through the years?
oh
Like
well,
maybe the top 5.
Robert Plant. And you know what? A lot of people will go,
right? Even today,
even today, especially even today.
Yeah.
You know what he's doing now with his harmonies, singing underneath, you know, Alison Krauss. That new album is one of the best albums to come out in decades in rock, and it's wonderful. He is learning. He's not only learning, he's mastered the post Robert Plant squelcher of old times. Yeah. He can't get there anymore, so he creates brand new ways to deliver even Zeppelin tunes occasionally, and he does it so well. But then again, you have to also say it's like Pavarotti in his prime. Robert Plant in his prime is practically untouchable. I can only give, you know, back when we first heard, you know, A Whole Lot of Love, okay? That's a lot of us Americans. That's the song we heard. A Whole Lot of Love. I just couldn't believe it. And then when I heard later the Emigrant song and those, which by the way to me is ripped off of an old TV show called Hawaiian Eye, those notes. Nobody's ever brought that up, but look it up on TV, on YouTube. You can find it, and it's the same thing, the same notes. But anyway, Robert Conrad starred in that, one of his earlier
Wait
shows.
a second. Are you telling me that Led Zeppelin copied something, Michael?
I hate to say it. I hate to break it to you, Larry, but occasionally the mighty Led Zeppelin were known to blatantly rip off anybody they could, of course. Yeah. But then again, everybody, and I mean everybody, was doing the same thing. Yep. But, you know, they shoot down the highest crows, don't they? You know, and they were flying high, and that's who the pot shots were taken at. But it's not, and yes, they did not give proper credit on their albums. And yes, some black blues greats were directly ripped off for long years, and that was wrong. Okay, but the band has since taken measures begrudgingly, barely, and thank God for small favors, I guess. But here's the deal: it's what they did from those ripoffs and how they did those ripoffs, even those ripoffs, and where they went from there. And you know what? All those other bands that were doing the exact same thing, where's their proof? Where's the proof in their pudding? Yeah. Because you know what we have? We have 7 masterpiece albums, in my opinion, by Led Zeppelin. Yeah. One of them a double.
And the best one is this one.
That's number 3 for me, man. That's number 3 for me. But the top 3, there's a gossamer curtain between those 3. You know, and that one to me, I used to say.
And wait until we talk about this.
Yes. Canada's very best band and one of the world's best bands, and
Glenn Kellaway
greatly
from the
maligned.
basement. Are you watching? Yeah.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
love this
very
band.
talented. Yeah.
Oh man, do you remember when they first came out?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
1976,
I remember
man.
hearing about this, right?
Yeah,
3:47 Eastern Standard Time. I bought the album. You know, I put it on as soon as the vocals started. I knew, right? But it was
right,
still great.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, the first thing I heard. Well, first of all, the way I heard it was the disc jockeys, KFRC, all of those local AM stations, and then some of the FM stations. The disc jockeys would always start before they would play the song, or as it would fade in, they would talk about them possibly being the Beatles. So ears pricked up immediately.
Yeah.
So guilty on all charges, Your Honor.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So I got called into it just like pretty much everybody else did. And then I heard that album, and I had fun with it for about a day and a half, thinking, could it be?
Yeah.
Would it be?
Yeah.
Especially when you hear Sub Rosa Subway.
Subway. Now that did sound close to the Beatles.
Man, it sounded like it could have come off the latest Wings album, even. And so I thought, And then Dr. Marvello.
Yeah.
That could be George right there. I'm hearing almost that George, type of feel to it. But then I settled down and I knew they weren't the Beatles. I mean, a good listen, and they're not the Beatles. That was still the teeny bopper in me wanting to believe and hoping, But once I settled down and I just listened to the band, I mean, what about California Jam? Goodbye, Mythical Malibu.
Yeah.
The San Andreas Misfortune will claim the lives of sons and wives. The headlines will fill page after page.
Yeah.
Where do you get lyrics like that these days? It's about the Great Quake and all of that. And you could swear you're listening to the Beach Boys the whole damn time. It's almost like a cross between the Beach Boys and, well, back in the USSR. And no, Mike Love, you didn't co-write Back in the USSR. Get off your high horse.
We could talk about Mike Love for an hour.
Oh, God. I have a lot of respect. His
solo albums.
Yeah, I have respect for Mike Love.
Yeah,
but you know what?
Boys, he was
great.
Definitely.
Yeah, and he filled a spot that was later kind of taken over, and I can understand him, where his feelings around that and all of that. But you know what? As soon as they all decided to go on tour and leave Brian to his own devices, things were going to change, right?
Yeah. Every
time. And Brian, was traveling. I always think of that Rolling Stones, How Many Light Years from Home? I always think of that.
Home,
yeah. That's Brian. His head's going like that, and the rest of the Beach Boys, we're in a rock band. We're out touring. And we come in, we learn our parts, and for the most part, don't play on the albums. Yeah. Thank you, Carol Kay.
Yeah.
Tommy Tedesco and all of those folks, from the Wrecking Crew. But the Beach Boys, they're not just Brian.
Yeah.
And especially if you're talking early Beach Boys, still Brian led, writing the songs and all of that. But they had a lot more input and I kind of like the very early Beach Boys for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked, I've got your list here of your favorite bands. So we've talked about the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and Klaatu, which is at number 12. So 3 is Pink Floyd and 4 is Queen. But in one of your recent videos, I think you were thinking of changing that.
Yeah, I was, and I'm not. But man, if there was a band that could challenge Pink Floyd for the number 3 spot, wouldn't it be somebody like Queen?
I think Queen, I love them and all, but they're not in one of my, they are one of my favorite bands, but not maybe even in the top 10. But for 4 individuals, they were all 4 of them were so talented.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess it depends where you heard them for the first time, because this band changed. All right. I discovered Queen, first of all, never heard of them, never heard of any of their albums. I was at Winterland. They were playing with a couple other bands, and they blew me away. I went out and I bought Queen 2 the next day. Now, Queen 2, then I immediately bought Queen, their first album. And then along came other albums like, Sheer Heart Attack, and of course, and Night of the Opera, Day of the Races. And around Day of the Races is when they started. Half of that album is like as good as any of these classic albums. And half of that album is kind of pointing to jazz and all those albums that we would later see them, really do well with the radio waves. I remember the first song that Queen did that I just wasn't crazy about, and everybody's going to go, "You're nuts," and that is "We Will Rock You." I remember is that off the News of the World album?
Yeah.
When that came out, I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. I didn't like the song. Can you believe that? Because everybody loves that song. I just didn't like it. I thought it was a weak track. And you know what? Brian May, in that article from one of my videos that I didn't get a chance to bring up, he even said he wasn't sure if that was going to be a good song. The only reason he helped write that song and get that together was because the audience was already singing, and you could hear them louder than Freddie sometimes at their concerts. So he said, let's just do a song where they can all sing together, get it out of their systems. Yeah. And that's why they put it together. Now, that makes it a smart song. It's got a hook, right? And everything. But, I don't like the way it goes into the second half, which I love. I love that portion of the song that, with Freddie and everything. But so they went in. For me, Queen at their best was when any album, when you turn it over on the back and it says no synths.
Yeah.
And that's not synths. They meant synthesizers. Yeah. Because people would, their sound was so eloquent, so spot on, with especially Brian May and all of those amazing effects, that they had to clarify to their audience. By the way, we don't use keyboards. We, except for when Freddie plays piano. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So number 5 on your list is definitely one of my favorite bands. It is.
Yes.
What did you think of this when you first heard it? Did you get it right away?
No, I didn't.
No. I don't think anybody did.
And you would have thought I'd been prepared because, my favorite Yes album, of course, is Close to the Edge. And this came in right after that. I like and somebody once, was it on Scott's channel where they say that side 2 was less than side 1 on Close to the Edge? I disagree with that. I think both side 1 and side 2 fit perfectly. And we're talking about an album, folks, that has 1 song on side 1 and 2 songs on side 2. All right. So 3 songs totally. So you'd think Tales of the Topographic Ocean, here we go. 1 song aside, 4 sides. I've already been prepped for this, but it seemed too busy to me at the time. I have since given it a listen to, and I'm really impressed with it. And I'll tell you who's been making me listen to it. It's been you and Glenn lately talking about this album. And I go, okay, I must be missing something with Tales. And, with Yes, you really got to be a fan to really to know their stuff, because they, over the years, they put out a lot of stuff, and sometimes changes in between albums were quite dynamic, not only in personnel, but in, concept and approaches, musical approaches, and things like that, But what's your favorite lineup, Larry?
Well, I would say I would go by the albums. I would say my favorite album is Relayer and Topographic Oceans. I know most fans, it's Close to the Edge, right? But
right.
I don't know.
It is for me, but
it is for most people. But
Yeah.
and I also just want to quickly say their later albums, like Key Studio
Hmm.
and Magnification, I feel they're almost as good as their earlier
I
albums.
loved Magnification.
Yeah,
I played the crap out of that
yeah,
album when it came out. I mean, that was the album that was playing in my home. You know,
yeah,
when I'd get home, I'd be getting things ready and stuff for a band practice or whatever. That album was up for months. I
yeah,
loved it. I
yeah,
felt like it was a shot in the arm for the band.
yeah. So some of your other favorite bands, Jethro Tull. What do you think of the one thing about Ian Anderson? I think by the way, I think he's a musical genius. I don't know what you think.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
I
But it's
agree.
just kind of sad the way, I don't know, with Martin Barr.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean, Martin Martin's presence in the band is like the thumb, well, not the thumbprint. That would have to be, I guess you'd say that's Ian. But maybe he's the other four fingers. You know, his whole approach gave it a flavor. His guitar playing gave it a flavor. And I don't know. I get tired of bands who are always pissed off at each other. Oh, by the way, great interview. I hate to, and now he segues, but great interview with
Thank you.
Mark Farner. I am
Yeah.
so jealous, not of the interview. You
Yeah.
deserve that interview in every way, but I'm so jealous that you got a chance to talk to a guy who knows how to pretty much make perfect sense in how he sees the world. He's just this guy. He's got this idea, and I loved it. You got him to actually think of possible lineups for the future right
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
in the interview, man.
Yeah.
But that's him, and I agree with him. By the way,
Yeah.
that good Lord, with Grand Funk, we have a chance to see that full band.
Yeah.
We could see them, that full damn band. I won't go see who's going, who's calling themselves Grand Funk. I
Yeah,
will
with
not go
5
see that
members
band.
instead of 3.
Yeah,
5 or
but
6
I
members.
will. I'll go see Mark Farner every single day I
Yeah.
possibly can. And guess what? This isn't a cut down to Don or Mel.
Great,
Okay.
talented musicians.
It was the three of them, and Mark got that in the interview. It was the three of them, the synergy of those three people in that band. I've seen time after time where they changed the song live just based on Brewer going to the snare a little bit more than he would in another version, and Mark picking up on it, and Mel just keeping that thing going. That they would evolve in their performances. And Mark Farner, he's not Jimmy Page, but damn, all-round guitar player.
Yeah.
That man, and his syncopation, seeing himself and almost filling in for another percussive instrument often. And we can't see these guys because of ego and a bad deal.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
It's so depressing, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I know he's forgiven them and everything, and it's just stupid though. It's
Well, more power to him, because you know what? That stuff will eat you up. If you can't forgive him, forget him.
Yeah.
But you can't forget your partners in crime from decades ago. You're not going to forget. So Mark probably has no choice for his own sanity than to forgive them.
Yeah.
But man, you know what? As far as I'm concerned, they're doing themselves a disservice. I would love to see Mark Farner and John Fogerty tour.
Yeah.
I would love to see those two tour. That was brought up in the article or in your interview.
They have so much in common, right?
Oh, in so many different ways too.
I just have to answer the door, Michael, and I'll just edit this part out. Just 1 second.
Not a problem.
I got a CD in the mail.
Awesome.
Somebody kept knocking on the door. So.
I didn't hear it. Sorry, man.
Yeah. So go on. What were you saying there?
But anyway, it's the thing is these guys, there was a magic there. And I've been in bands where that kind of magic almost happened.
Yeah.
And it is rare. It is rare when musically three people like that connect and can make so much sound from three people. Baby, you're talking what? 10 strings and some cowhide.
Yeah.
And listen, man, listen to what they accomplished. And yeah, I understand, feeling second rate. I mean, you had, first of all, Mark was the singer most of the time.
Yeah.
Although Don could give him a run for his money.
Don's a great singer.
Fantastic singer. He wrote the songs. He had the job of guitar player in a decade that if you were a guitar player, you got chicks, right?
Yeah.
He visually was kind of the centerpiece of the band. And that's got to be, wearing, especially when you know what he smells like when he couldn't, get a shower and you're on that damn tour bus and you've seen him blow his nose, the man don't look pretty then, girls. And I can understand that. I can understand all of that and how that kind of weighs into it. But, what happened to bands where it was like, it's for the good of the music? It seemed to me when it was no longer good for the music, the writing was, on the wall, many, many teco, whatever. You know what I mean? It was on the wall and the end was nigh.
Yeah. It's
sad.
Like Don and Mel, they don't care about the fans, obviously, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or there, you brought up a good point. I think it was you. There's more money in the three of them playing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you've got the original Grand Funk. That's arena.
Yeah.
Okay. That's arena after arena after arena. That's not the big fairgrounds. That's not the small, privately owned baseball club grounds, which are great arenas, by the way. I would rather see them in that kind of, for my own selfishness.
Yeah.
But I would also like to see the band make some change for a bit, and it's all up to you, Mel and Don.
Well, I was almost going to ask him, like, I think it's like there's three of them, right? But if Mel switched and agreed with Mark, you know what I mean? Like,
I was thinking that same thing. What happens if there's a lover's quarrel or whatever, to me, it was just a bad deal anyway. Remember that clip of George Harrison and he's at a table and there's zillions of records and he goes, "Here I am, me signing more stuff. I don't know what I'm signing." It's got to be, oh man, when I think of, the trust that Mark was talking about.
He was a friend, right?
Yeah. You just, that, hey man, right. Don't question it.
Yeah.
And boy, what a lesson to learn.
Yeah.
But you never know. You never know what people are thinking behind you. All of a sudden, you think you're in good terms with everybody, and so-and-so's just been seething behind the lines for years. And
I think what you should do, Michael, is you should get Don Brewer on your channel and just sneak into.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. But if he sees this interview, that you can screw that idea. But and then who else could we get to get Mel talking? And then just kind of, I don't know, man. To me, it just seems like a financial missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But on top of that, what a great, I hate to use the term, but you never know. I mean, these guys are getting older, but it could be one of the greatest last hurrahs in rock. Yeah. I mean, they were a major band, and talk about no backing tracks, except for maybe some Seagulls and Closer to Home. We got to get some Seagulls and Closer to Home, right? But again, I'm not against that kind of backing track usage.
And that the Shea Stadium concert, it's actually on YouTube. Like it's not a great quality, but almost the full concert is, and they were so good live. Mel's bass, he had the best bass sound on the early albums. I love that bass.
Oh, he knew how to fill in the holes.
Yeah.
You know, and especially with Don's style of drumming, and then Mark Farner playing almost a percussive element at times. Mel's, you know, bass became super important. It had to be the right kind of glue for that band, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. You know, I saw Mark in a 2022, I think it was 2022, where he was playing live, and what was it? Foot stomping music.
Yep.
Man, the man still got the chops.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, he's got, I mean, the vocal chops.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm going, they're still strong, you know? And he was sounding absolutely, he hasn't lost a step as far as energy goes. Yeah. You know, he looks a bit long in the tooth like the rest of us.
Yep.
I wasn't always this beautiful after all, Larry. There was a time when there could have been a visual reason for me to actually have a channel. But now Michael, people have to close their eyes and imagine.
Michael, your toupee looks amazing.
Well, you know, let me just pull it. People will start believing that. Now I've got, it's going away slowly but surely, you know, but
I've got down here. I actually planned ahead, and I have a couple questions here. But what is your biggest frustration with your YouTube channel, if you have it?
Editing.
No, I mean once your video, like with YouTube in general.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I did a video that did real well for me. Got over 100,000 views. And it was, you're aware of it. It was the, let me see, the top 10, and I guess it turned out to be 13, most important albums of all time. And it was all based on why these top 10 were for me. Okay. And I gave specific reasons. And to this day, I still can't figure out what happened. But, you know, YouTube put an age limit on that video.
Wow.
Now, I occasionally use a damn or a hell.
Yeah.
If I use anything beyond that, I'll bleep it out often. There's a couple of videos you could probably get me using slightly stronger language from way back, but generally speaking, I don't do a lot of cussing or anything like that on the video. It doesn't take us anywhere. But
I think probably what happened was somebody didn't like something, like maybe you swore, you know, during the video. Right. Big deal, right?
Right.
And they flagged it, right? Or they and then YouTube maybe looks into it, or maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, but you know, I of course the channel's monetized. That's how I'm making a living these days, is for the channel. Yeah. And boy, that took a bite out of you know, the money that the channel made. Huge bite out of it there for a while. And then I got another video, the one I did on, and this was the most frustrating. I did a video on the halftime show at the Super Bowl, Rihanna. And I did a little remark where she used the sign there at the end. Everybody saw it. It was on TV. Everybody saw this on YouTube, right? And I brought up, I had a little clip where I said, and that was a salute to them, folks, not you, right? And evidently YouTube saw that as me believing in the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Okay. So they put a little Illuminati tag down underneath, you know, just above the comments, but below the title, like they do. It's kind of like their way of doing that. And I'm going, man, if you listen to the video, see, because first of all, does the Illuminati exist or doesn't it? I don't know, and I don't give a damn. But I do know that boys will be boys and girls will be girls. And when you've got an elite bunch of spoiled brat, rich idiots they'll find something to believe in. And I think they believe in it. Okay. And I think it was a salute to
Yeah.
whatever she believes in. But see, these people can afford to go to summer camp and tell ghost stories and believe in these things, you know? Now, that doesn't mean there isn't an Illuminati or anything like that, but I didn't say yay or nay in that video whatsoever. But I got this big red flag because of that. So that's frustrating.
Yeah.
I worry about, you know, I don't want, first of all, YouTube is a wonderful platform. I appreciate being able to be on it. It's their platform. They have a right to make the rules that they make. I'm a firm believer in that. That's called free enterprise, baby. I'm all for that. But I would hope that it isn't a matter of you can only say certain things, because I'm an advocate of free speech. Okay. And at the same time, don't let me catch you yelling fire in a crowded theater. All right. There is a limit to free speech. You can't just say anything. And I understand that. But I would like it to be where, you know, that all of us can talk through these things that we disagree with without being, you know, getting our feelings hurt. And, oh, my God, I feel triggered.
Yeah.
That word triggers me. The word trigger.
The word trigger triggers you.
Oh, my God. You know, it's like, what are you talking about? And occasionally I get it, you know, usually weeks after a video. Yeah. Then the trolls come out, right? Yeah, the troll, they don't come out when I'm still typing and interacting with, because that's why I call it the tribe. I spend 2 to 4 hours every day answering the comments for my latest videos. Matter of fact, doing this interview, I haven't answered the comments in my latest video, so I put a little tag on it saying I'll be back, right? Because it's that's part of what my channel is about, is a conversation. And guess what? I call it the tribe. I don't believe in tribalism. I believe in a tribe, a collection of people who love great music, who have totally different viewpoints on what is good heavy metal, what's not heavy metal, why I can't stand the Beatles. There's room for all of that on the channel. And guess what? Don't get your panties in an uproar because somebody disagrees with you. And that's the biggest thing, is the frustrating. And here's the biggest lesson I've learned on YouTube, Larry, and you're good at this. You're a black belt at this. And that is content creators. You can't afford to get your feelings hurt. Okay? You just can't do that. If you do that, if you're going to wear your heart on your sleeve, you're only in for frustration. It's only a damn YouTube channel, folks. You know, you could shut it down tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, when I started, I've been on YouTube for 17 years. So early on, you know, the first maybe couple years, my feelings were hurt, right? Like, somebody would say something and it would hurt and I'd be upset and all that. But then I started doing this series called Bad Grammar, where I would read these, you know, these negative troll comments, and I would
you're brave,
around, right?
You're brave.
Into a positive, so
right. Yeah. You know, there early on, like I said, my channel goes in 2 phases. There's the first 3. It was about, the channel's only been rock and roll for 1 year.
Yeah.
All right. That was in February. I think it was the 20 something, where I actually did a video based on Led Zeppelin. It was the first time I did anything outside the Beatles, because that one that we were talking about, that was going to be a one-off. I was a rock fan. Hey, here's something I was thinking about today, since you're on at the channel. And I got 1,000 views on that. And before, I had never gotten over 115 views. And so you would think, oh, there's a thought, Michael.
Yeah.
Duh. you know, and
But,
I did a
you
second
have
part.
but you have an interest in that. You're not just, oh, I can get views doing something I really have no interest in. You actually
Right.
have an interest in it. So it's
Oh yeah. Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
bonus, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, I can do this
Yeah.
and get views. Okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And but on top of that, it's like rock and roll is pretty much my whole life. It enters my love of rock and roll, my love of music,
Yeah.
enters so many portions of my life that, and I think for a lot of people who are like 40 and above, you know, especially, those folks know of a time that a lot of the younger folks today just they have no point of reference.
Yeah.
It's not that they're missing the point. It's there is no point of reference for them. Now, a few of them make extra efforts to go out and they start re-listening to this or that and everything. And man, there are some sharp younger people. But who is it? Sam over on Glenn's channel. I was surprised. Now he's a younger guy.
Mhm.
I was surprised that he ranked Rubber Soul. No, Sam, say it isn't so. My favorite Beatle album. He ranked it pretty low on his list.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, and I thought at first, oh, I'll give him the, you know, but then you never know with Sam if he can take the joke. I don't know.
He's
you know,
he's got a bad temper.
yeah. Ooh, well, then, sorry, Sam. I'll be nice. But no, you know, here's the deal. I started thinking, you know, no, wait a minute, listen to this. And I know he had he had folks that turned him on to music, and he goes back through a lineage sort of way, but he's still trapped in his time zone as a young man, just like you and I were.
Yeah.
Okay. We remember when the only computer was Frank at a city, two cities down, who owned a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Okay. Other than that, you wanted extra information, you went to this thing. It was a big building.
Yeah.
They called it a library,
Yeah.
you know, or you bought magazines off Sawyer's newsstand in my city, and you did your research that way. But you have to understand, we grew up at a time where, you know, we heard 4 or 5 Beatle news items a day, whether it was on KFRC, AM, or whatever FM station, or the nightly news at 6, and then at 11 in the magazines we picked up, or in the rags that would be there as you're trying to pay for your groceries. And so when Rubber Soul came out, especially when there had been no freaking rock album before, you go, what? What do you mean? There was rock album? No. There wasn't, not before Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul is the first rock album, rock pop album. You might give credit to Frank Sinatra. He did was it In the Wee Hours of the Morning? I'm going to forget the name of the record. Something like that, where he did a concept type of feel to the album. All right. So I always give him that. But that album didn't sell, did not translate like freaking Rubber Soul did. Okay, finally, we had a blueprint, and we're still following the blueprint to this very day on what is exactly an album and what do we expect from one, right?
But speaking of Rubber Soul, so you must have grown up with the US version, right?
Actually, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And
so do you not think that I've Just Seen a Face is a better opener than Drive My Car?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, here we go. I've Seen a Face. There's several cuts off Help that belong on Rubber Soul, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
Yeah.
It just has that sound. I've Just Seen the Face fits so well with Norwegian Wood. Yeah. All right, so well with that. Yeah. I mean, it's just perfect. And you get this sense with the American version. You get the sense that they're in Scandinavia for the album. That to me is what I always got. But then I later, you know, getting what they wanted to react and everything, and or what they wanted to present as the Beatles. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. But you know, if you're going to ask me which is the better song, Drive My Car or I've Just Seen a Face, there's no contest. I've Just Seen a Face is the better song. But then so is A Hard Day's Night off their third album.
Yeah.
So do we grab that one? I don't know.
And so
and another one that gets a black eye on that is what is that? I'd rather see you dead, little girl, than to be with another man. I'm so tired of people apologizing for what they've written.
Yeah.
It was fine. You know what? Every red-blooded American man, anyway, Larry, felt that same damn way when we were growing up. Okay, yes, is it misogynistic?
Yeah.
Well, since you discovered the word, I guess so.
Yeah. Back then, right? Nobody ever thought twice about it, right? It was just another song.
It's just another song. All right, the guy's a little bit more upset than the last song.
Yeah.
All right. But I almost feel like, what's that guy that he's bald now, but he used to have red hair, the comedian.
Red Skelton? I don't know.
No, he's kind of a new guy. He's in all the new Star Wars Mandalorian things. Oh God. Anyway, he just talks the way he sees it,
Yeah.
And that's me. It's like we apologize for way too much. We're way too sensitive. We need to learn to take a joke, okay, and put Song of South back on Disney.
Yeah. One more thing about the Beatles. So when Revolver came out, you had the US version for that too, right? Which was lacking three John Lennon songs.
Yeah, I know that.
What a ripoff.
Oh man, but you know what? I felt when that was first out, I go, but his are the best songs on the album, with the exception of Eleanor Rigby.
Yeah.
I mean, his stuff is the forward-thinking stuff on there. Paul, Eleanor Rigby, magnificent. Okay, for no one. Okay, great songs, but still standard fare. I mean, a light year beyond. Some of his, like Michelle.
Yeah.
But still standard fare. Still, hey, I'm Paul, and I can write a song, and that's what we got from him, and that's what we expected from him. But man, John Lennon songs, especially She Said, and Tomorrow Never Knows. Those two songs, and ending each side. You knew. I mean, it didn't matter how big of a McCartney fan you were. You knew the exciting stuff on that album was Lennon.
Yeah. During the Beatles, I was, as much as I love Paul's songs, I was more of a Lennon guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My
three favorite Beatles songs are A Day in the Life, Strawberry Fields Forever, and Tomorrow Never Knows.
Wow. Wonderful songs. I would say mine is number one song would be Eleanor Rigby. Only because you heard my story, Larry, it made me cry. It made me cry, right? And any song that emotionally does that to you. But Strawberry Fields, not Penny Lane, but Strawberry Fields. Penny Lane's great. It's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. But Strawberry Fields, and here's the album the Beatles never intended to make that's got to be listed higher than it is, and that's Magical Mystery Tour. Mm-hmm. Great job, Columbia.
Yeah.
Finally, you did it right, because the Beatles, I don't like the EP. I don't think I would have cared for the EP, but the way it was put together as an album and later adopted by the Beatles themselves, that's it. I wind up listening to Magical Mystery Tour more often than Sgt. Pepper these days. I find it very, Baby You're a Rich Man. There are so many gems to find in that song.
I used to dislike when I was a kid, right? But I love it now.
Yeah. Once you figure it out.
Yeah.
Because I think I was the same way. Yeah. It was a little too weird, a little too exotic. And then you start figuring out, and then you start listening to the parts and the overall sound. Talk about Orange Sunshine. Yeah. What a feel. I mean, it has that feel to me. Well, I think of that term, Orange Sunshine, when I hear Baby You're a Rich Man, which is psychedelic rock in its purest form.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's the Beatles and then there's everybody else.
Yep. It's just the way of the world.
I would love to do this again in a while, Michael. I really enjoyed this.
I enjoyed the hell out of this, Larry. It's so nice to talk to you.
What are some upcoming videos? for your channel?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as soon as I'm done talking to you, um, and I am sorry I missed this the other day. We couldn't have conducted this interview. We had road
No
work
problem.
outside. Oh, I
Yeah.
was ripping my hair out. The guys were all waving at me, from my
Yeah.
front porch, and I'm looking at them like maybe if I do that, they'll go away.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to talk about Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons in my next video. It'll be a real quick one. I know I've talked about them to death on
Yeah.
my channel, but they've announced the last shows on.
I've heard
They
this
have
before.
at Madison Square
Remember
Garden.
Motley Crue's final show there a few years ago in
Oh,
LA?
oh, oh! This is what I'm talking about. And in the same article,
Yeah.
they they do double entendres and everything. They're still talking nonsense,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh my God, rock and roll goes Disney. This is there's a whole series of videos I want to do on that as well. And of course, I continue to cover. I want to do a video that covers the four sections of the Beatles as I've always seen them: early Beatles,
Hmm.
mid Beatles, psychedelic Beatles, later Beatles. And I want to kind of divide those up and tell the story from an interesting perspective. It'll be a little bit of sharing the music, the albums that happened during that time, the story behind it, the approach to making those albums, and what was involved in all of that. And I'm also going to be doing a video on my expectations. Hopefully, they're going to be releasing Rubber Soul in the same way they did Revolver. And that'll be based on my listening to the mixes we have available right now and what I want to hear
Yeah.
in that album. Not a whole lot of, well, I want this studio chatter or that studio chatter. I want to talk about where these instruments need to be on volume level in the sound stage, the stereo spectrum, and what we need to expect it. And it's about damn time that these albums got this makeover. I don't know if you're a fan of this or not. There's a lot of fans that go, no, I just want the old, whatever. And some fans go, no, I just want the old mono. And I happen to think we need a good, superior stereo mix for these albums.
Yeah.
And the Beatles would have done it. It's just like George said of Ringo. Oh, Ringo was always in the Beatles. He just didn't enter until this chapter, right? Yeah, but it was always Ringo.
Yeah.
We just didn't know. And it's kind of like the Beatles would have done this. I have no doubt in my mind. They would have done this decades ago if the technology had been there. And it's here and they're doing it. So wonderful, wonderful news. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. And please subscribe to Michael's channel. I'll have a link below and all kinds of stuff to promote you, but you don't need any promoting, Michael.
We'll welcome you with open arms.
Your channel started in October of 2021 and you've got 25.6 thousand subscribers. You don't need any more.
But I want more, master. Yeah. I want more. Well, yeah, you know how it is. I would have given my soul practically to get your first 1,000. Yeah. And you get there, but 2,000 sounds better.
Yeah.
So, what do you do? But you're the monster channel, man. 40K above. Yeah. Good Lord. You're the one that's teaching us all, Larry.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, Michael.
You find it just as hard to take a compliment as me.
Yeah. I'm the greatest.
Yes, you are.
No, thank you very much.
And Sally wants you to come home as soon as possible.
Michael. Thank you very much.
Oh, boy.